so much, Kelly. So I'm actually going to read now because I didn't want to follow anybody, but I especially don't want to follow Lisa Holstein. So I will read now. I'm going to read nonfiction as a part of my ongoing interest in making the personal public by way of what Jane Gallup calls anecdotal theory. This is a section of a much longer essay, and it is kind of depressing and ends on sort of a bleak note. But I did want to say that in the second section of the essay, I experienced like a fair amount of happiness. But then in the third section, I lose it, or else I wouldn't be writing about it. And in drafting this essay, I was calling it "I Know You're Married, but I've Got Feelings Too." But then, in regard to something completely different, Lisa Holstein used the phrase "motherfucker in the middle," which is actually the better title you will come to see. So thank you to Lisa for letting me appropriate that turn of phrase. So this is the motherfucker in the middle. And it begins with an epigraph from Hervé Goubert's journals, The Mausoleum of Lovers, a book that's very dear to me. And he asks, is the experience of pain preferable to the annihilation of experience? The night before the threesome, I spilled a full glass of diet soda on my laptop. I imagine this seems unrelated, but it is in fact the inciting incident. According to Narrative First, an online creative writing course that promises to make me a master writer for $350 a month, the inciting incident is the event or decision that begins a story's problem. Everything up until that moment is backstory. Everything after is the story. This information I provide for free. It was late at night when I spilled a glass of diet soda. I pushed his towels into the wet keyboard of my laptop as though trying to stop a bleed. The computer continued to work for 10 more minutes, which as it turns out is the exact amount of time it takes for me to believe you've done no permanent damage. Then it died. A few women who had shared my bed had remarked that it was courting danger, keeping my laptop and a full glass of liquid so close beside one another on my nightstand. I said that it had never happened in the 5 years I'd had the computer, so if I was courting danger, the courtship did not seem to be a successful one. It's in the backstory, the other unsuccessful courtship, about which I have written so much elsewhere and about which here I will only summarize. I was in love with someone, Kay, who was with someone else and who did not want to be with me, though she provided over the course of many years plenty enough dangerous hope in him that she someday might. Ultimately, she never did, and this split in half like a coconut in my heart. I have not recovered and do not expect to. By the time you're reading this, I do not know how long it will have been that she and I have not spoken. Years, you can safely presume. What I would bet a body part on, though, is that whenever it is you're reading this, I will still be unable to make a life or a self that isn't calibrated by the fact that she did not love me back. That is the pertinent information from this larger story. It is being told by a heartbroken person, one who has a tendency to do inexplicable things in order to alleviate, numb, distract from, and even occasionally increase his pain. Everything after is the story. Yeah, it's completely fried, the customer service representative said to me at the Genius bar the next day. He did not say it with much sympathy, or really any sympathy. I suppose he is used to telling people their electronics are no longer working and never will again. And so he has cultivated the polite but walled-off demeanor one often finds in funeral directors and oncologists. I purchased a new computer onto which the entirety of my previous hard drive, which mercifully remained intact, was then copied. The Genius assured me that nothing would be lost in the migration. And he was right, nothing had. Everything I worried about losing was still there, was fine. My immense iTunes library, every draft of my novel, all of my contacts, even my calendar kept the dates I'd set for the future, sparing me the indignity of having to call my psychiatrist's office, wait 20 minutes for someone to finally pick up the fucking phone and tell me when my next appointment was. It was what I found that unraveled me, sent me spinning in a way a missing novel draft or a lost Joni Mitchell discography never could have. speak less vaguely, 1,400 photos that I had willed myself to delete over the course of several years were now back again, having apparently never been deleted at all. There were photos from every failed relationship I'd ever been in. There were screenshots of love proclaimed and what one person wanted to do to the other's body. There were videos, too, documented sex from these failed relationships, footage I'd forgotten about entirely until there I was watching it again. I started to sob, knowing that the sobbing would continue the more I looked through the photos, which did not at all discourage me or otherwise stop me from continuing. There seemingly exists no causal link between what I know and what I do. This will become more evident throughout the course of this essay. Then I came upon photos of Ned, the beautiful brindled mutt I adopted in 2013 and loved fiercely for 5 weeks until, out of nowhere and with no legible motive, he lunged at me, sinking his teeth deep into the flesh of my left wrist. I kept the photos for many months after I had to surrender him, even though, or perhaps especially because, they pained me. Ned is
Can you read louder a little bit?
louder.
Yeah.
Ned asleep on the coffee table, Ned in bed with me, his paws over my arms, Ned with the guiltiest, most precious face beside the host of stuffed toys I had just purchased and which he had just reduced to a mess of cotton and fabric. I continued to cry. I had not yet stopped. I am endowed with a particular biological faculty that allows me to actively cry for hours with no threat of depletion, which is something I learned well before this evening, which still nonetheless surprises me. I played Tori Amos's Hey Jupiter on a loop, loud as I could, making me the least popular tenant in my apartment complex for the night. And then there they were, approximately 600 photos from, with, of, Kay. These were more familiar to me than the others, as I had spent so many nights over the years staring at them, digitally worrying them like a loose tooth. This process had become a kind of accelerated self-harm that I would perform and then put away, far less dramatic than the extinguishing of lit matches onto my thighs that I turned to at 15. Photos of her taken in bathroom mirrors, photos sent from the shower, photos in her underwear, photos of us, my arms wrapped around her in bed in my old apartment in the North End, me kissing her cheek, her eyes closed, looking blissful before a Fiona Apple concert. The photo from inside the theater that same night, both of us looking at each other with what would easily be assumed by an uninformed viewer as love. A photo she asked me not to post publicly, so obviously indicting was it. A photo of both of us under the covers in her apartment in Brighton, the only night we ever slept together. The screenshots were there too, the many exchanges that I'd saved over the years as a kind of evidence of my being misled and manipulated. They had been the hardest to delete, and so were fittingly the most difficult to confront again. A text. Not to be too forward, but I can't stop thinking about how bad I wanted you to fuck me all weekend. A text. That shirt was becoming on you. Then again, if I were on you, I would be coming too. A text. One day I hope you will kiss me without asking if you can. The more fraught a context, the more one ought to be on one's interpretive guard. Elizabeth Camp. By this point, the sobbing had evolved into a kind of hypomanic episode, which now included violent shaking and hyperventilation. I paced my bedroom and tried to chain smoke the nerves off. I chewed a 2 milligram Xanax, which did nothing at all, and then 10 minutes later, I pulverized another with the back of a spoon and snorted it through a straw. I could think of no other way to put it. I felt assaulted by memory, my own and my computer's. I had spent 3 hours in a kind of phenomenological experience of time travel, forced to tour previous regrets and heartaches, the photographic relics of which were wounds I had deleted for a reason. It was 2 a.m., and my mind showed no signs of ceasing its spinning. Sleep was out of the question. I concluded that the only thing I could do that might numb me, that might snap me out of it, was to land myself in some stranger's bed. Fuck the pain away in less delicate terms, which can actually be a swallowed salve if you play it right. I did not play it right. The Narrative First program, elaborating on their assurance to make of me a master writer, promises to teach me how to do three distinct things. The first, find and plug story holes. Quickly identify the problem areas in your story and confidently render solutions to fix them. This pedagogy is predicated on a notion that feels entirely false to me, for I do not write to identify the problems and then solve them. If I had the capacity to do such a thing, I am almost certain I would not write at all. I would instead be happy. That is to say, this writing is born out of knowing what the problems are, and its interest is not in solving them, but simply containing them, gathering them in a house of language. This story is filled with holes which I do not wish to plug, holes which I am hoping allow some kind of light to tunnel through. The source of the problem is knowing what the problem is. Claire Hoffman. And then I was logged into an app in a chat room full of 20 or 30 users, all within a 15-mile radius of me. There were no pictures on display, just blank avatars emitting bubbles of language. And the way it worked was that if you wanted to have a private conversation with someone, you had to request that. In that private conversation, pictures and more information could be exchanged. But in the general chat room, what was mostly encouraged was the declaration of what one was looking for and where one was looking for it. I typed, can't sleep, horny in Hyde Park, bi-ish, 25, can host or travel. I expected silence or else conspicuous bots urging me to follow a link to their private webcam where they put on a show just for me. Imagine my surprise then to receive a private chat request from young YNG Austin couple. I accepted and immediately sent them the pictures I use on every dating/hookup platform. They are the photos of myself I can tolerate the most. One of me in LaGrange, Texas, looking deceivingly slim and in my favorite boots. These boots, actually. In another, I'm shirtless, but the photo is vignetted and filtered such that you can only see my chest, which is not so bad. I am decently shouldered and have what I think is just the right amount of chest hair, and not my stomach, which is bloated and big from mood stabilizers and antipsychotics, water retaining, pronounced stretch marks which look like the work of a lion's claws. Lastly, I sent a photo of my only slightly above average in size dick, my hand gripping the base to enhance the perception of its length and girth. I expected, out of reciprocity, pictures from young Austin couple, but did not receive them. Nor would they give me their names or exact ages, choosing instead to say that they were in their late 20s, which is what 32-year-olds say. We played a tedious "what are you into" tug of war, until eventually I admitted that I've never had a threesome, that I don't even like three-way calling. But if that was what they were looking for at 3 a.m., I'd be into it. At this point, they did send a few pictures, though none of them revealed their faces. Her tits, his dick, and a picture of her blowing him, her hair covering her face. They still would not give me their names, only their address, their apartment number, and the code to unlock the front door of their building. I told them I'd be there in 20 minutes. Taking a sip of Diet Coke first. What a fun place to stop. I have no idea if I live or die. 2 days before, University of Texas sophomore Haruka Weiser, a dance major, was murdered on campus by a 17-year-old homeless man. The body was found in a creek across the street from where the majority of the MFA writing workshops I've been in were held. There was an undeniable sense of disturbance permeating the city, everyone seeming braced, and the university sent frequent updates to its students via email and text message, urging cautious behavior, the usage of well-lit streets, and the buddy system. Narrative first, second promise is that they will teach me how to create complex characters. Suppose I were to say that it served as something like mental lubrication, not knowing whose house I was entering, not knowing if I was walking my way into a situation I would not be able to walk myself out of. Suppose I were to say that the specter of irrevocability was maybe what turned me on the most. Suppose I were to say that when I knocked and a man opened the door, and upon my entering I saw no one else, just the man in his boxers and 2 cats. There was an undeniable sliver of excitement in the overwhelming panic that swelled, and that when the woman quickly came out of the bathroom and walked down the hallway, wearing only a bra and a thong, a slight shard of disappointment and a relief. So I'm all set on characters with complexities. Should I take off my boots, I said, before I made it too far into their apartment, ever the polite guest. Only if you don't mind those guys going inside of them, the woman said, motioning to the cats. Should we sit, the man said. Sure, I said, arduously taking off my 2 tight boots, leaning against the wall. I took a seat across from the man as the woman refilled a glass of wine. Do you want a glass, she asked. I said I quit drinking years ago, where I could have just said no thank you. How come, she asked, taking the seat next to the man whose glass was already full. I wasn't very good at it. How do you mean not good at it? I mean I would drink 3 bottles of Yellowtail and then start calling people and telling them what their problem was. Oh, she said. The cats began to play with my boots, turning them over and tunneling inside. I told you, she said. The black one is Otto, the orange one is Sarah. And do you guys have names, I asked. Oh, right, the man said. I'm Sam and she's Jean. I'm still Vincent, I said. They asked in the earlier chat if I would bring weed, and so I took out the joint. I can light this in here? They nodded. I took a long drag and passed it to Sam. I scanned the books on their shelves, many of my favorites, even a few written by my friends. Also on one of the shelves, in a fancy silver frame, was a photo of the 2 of them, Jean in a white dress and Sam in a tux. I looked right at Jean's hand, now holding the joint, and saw a wedding ring, not an especially nice one. When is the stone being put in, I would have joked under wildly different circumstances. Jean handed me the joint. So you guys are married, I said. They looked at each other, caught fish, and then looked at me. We didn't want to say that in the chat because we thought you might not come over if you knew we were, she said, a very generous estimation of my value system. Does it bother you? I don't care, I said, which was true at the time. With the joint finished and the basic questions out of the way, I felt the 3 of us being enveloped in a balloon of silence. I waited for either of them to shove a pushpin through it, or else to make a move toward the bedroom, but they sat, quiet as nuns, patient as potted plants. So, I said, eventually, heroically. So, they said, in accidental unison. During the threesome, which went on for some time, I had some difficulty maintaining an erection. And the times I was hard, I wasn't always entirely hard enough to puncture. This did not stop the husband from trying to place a condom on my semi-erect cock while his wife straddled my face. I had thought until now that he was just totally oblivious, but it occurs to me as I write this that it very well could have been an action committed out of pride or hostility. Maybe he was trying to draw more attention to the fact, of which I'm quite sure all 3 of us were aware, that I was not hard enough to fuck his wife and he was. Maybe it was in response to the fact that I made her come quickly at the start while going down on her. How'd you get so good at that, she asked. I spent a lot of time at Smith in college, I said. It wasn't nerves, and it wasn't a lack of attraction preventing a reliable erection. It was the combination of 200 milligrams of Lamictal, my mood stabilizer, and 50 milligrams of clozapine, my antipsychotic, a cocktail which I have been taking for years to treat bipolar disorder, and which can complicate and often compromise my sexual abilities. There are entire threads on the forums I frequent for people with bipolar, to which men contribute their experiences with different drugs as it pertains to erectile dysfunction, and in one thread a poll regarding which medication the users have found to provide the least amount of complication. The winner, though not by much, appears to be Tegretol. In these threads are occasionally users who say the sexual side effects advertised are just self-fulfilling prophecies. The poster will say he's been on X medication for X number, but it must be said, a A lot of us are on the forums in the first place because we have a tendency to be self-fulfilling prophecies, which is not to say that there's any merit to the boastfully erect user's claim, but rather to reposition it as a kind of wishful thinking. On these medications, I don't spend a significant amount of time every day thinking about setting myself on fire. So if the cost of that is extreme difficulty achieving orgasm and capricious erections, it is a cost I pay willingly. There have been many people in my life who find it staggering that I would accept this trade-off, and exactly 0 of them have seen me on a psych ward, have seen me batshit manic, or so catatonic that I just piss in an empty 2-liter, the distance from bedroom to bathroom insurmountable as Everest. Near the end, I excuse myself from their bedroom to use the bathroom, encouraging them to continue without me, the way you say, you don't have to pause the movie, I'll only be a minute, I won't miss anything. When I returned, they were holding each other, kissing softly, whispering, I love you so much. And just like that, the bottom of the evening fell out. I was staring at what I didn't have, but have wanted so desperately and for so long, the very picture of what might have been if not for. All the pain I tamped down earlier in the evening, and which I had come there to escape, rose in my throat like the threat of vomit. I'm gonna get going, I said, putting my clothes back on. Neither of them protested or paid me any mind at all. Once I was fully dressed, I went out into the hallway, removed both cats from my boots, one asleep in each, and put them back on. Does this door lock by itself, or? I waited for a response but didn't get one. I felt invisible, and with no one there to tell me I wasn't. Outside, it was tomorrow already, 6:30 a.m., the sun rising and clocking into work for the day. Grackles darted from branch to branch in the live oak outside the building, caroling their rotten song. Next door, sprinkler heads popped up from underground like inquisitive groundhogs and began their spewing. And me, oh, I was sobbing before my key was even in the ignition. Narrative first, final promise, to teach me how to craft meaningful narratives, write something that will endure. I write this with the opposite name. I don't want it to endure. I want it to evanesce.